Here I talk default parameter values for C++ functions and their implication for function overloading. You can find a discussion of C++ functions in one of the previous videos, whose link will be available in the description. Here I will discuss default values for function parameters. A programmer sets default values for a parameter of a function. Compiler picks that value and sets it to the corresponding function parameter when the function is called without providing an argument value. Let's jump right into the coding. Here I have a tiny code to begin with. Here, uh, since we are talking about default parameter values, so parameter is belongs to the function, so we need to have function. So let me create a function which returns integer data by carrying out the summation of integer data with let me create some base value 10, maybe make it constant. So this function will actually uh, add the received data into this base value and return that value. So this is the prototype of the function. Now I would like to put the definition after the main function. In the definition I must provide the name of the parameter. Let me call it w, and it will create return variable compute base value and w and return return value. Now this is the function, and let me have a code to use this function, to call this function and display the data sum, and I want to pass the value 6, let me call it. So now this function will actually do the job of calling this function by passing 6 in parameter w and do the computation and get the result, and that result will be actually placed in the output stream. Now let me switch to the terminal to execute and see it. So I have this file in the here main.cpp. Let me do compilation. Output file is main.exe and source file main.cpp. So compilation done. Now I have main.exe created. Now I'm going to execute it. So the result of execution is 16. Right now this function is working, and the question main reason we are talking this topic today is, what if, for example, a programmer or user of your function wants to call this function without providing an argument. User wants this sort of convenience that if the function is called without argument value, then there should be some default value that could be used, right? So in that case, to make this invocation legal or error free, we need to supply a default value for the parameter, default value for w, right? So you can supply the default value in this place. If you equate this int to the value, let's say 0 or some different value 5, then it means that you are actually telling the compiler that default value for this parameter of the function should be 5. If the function is not called without passing the argument, then this default value will be used for the variable w, and the computation will take place. That means in this case, in the second case, in this invocation, it will do the summation of 10 and 5, and it will return 15, and that 15 will be printed. So let me switch to the terminal to show this. Let me clear the screen. Compilation and linking and execution. Now we have, in the first case it was 16, in the second case it is 15. So default value was used. Now to make it a little bit complicated, I want to have another function with two parameters. Let me make the name different, 1 and 2. This is 1, this is 1. Now I have another function with two parameters. Let me have a definition of this function, int w, and second parameter is going to be int let me call it x, and it will actually do the summation of both parameters, wx on the top of the base value. So we have this function. Now to call this function, let me just copy this and paste and do necessary editing so that it will call the second function. So I have this invocation. Let me comment this out for a while. So I have this invocation 6, 7, and we have two parameters. It calls this function and displays the output. But if in case if I call this function with only one parameter value, 6, then this is illegal, because this second function is not designed to receive only one value, one argument value. If you want to allow the user of your function to be able to use this function with only one argument, then you can supply default value here. Let me give it 10. In this case, in the first case, this w and x will get 6 and 7. In the second case, w will get 6 and x will get the value 10. Right. Also, let me have another function with 3 arguments, and let me call this sum3. And the definition, let me copy and paste and do necessary editing. 3 wx, and third is going to be y. So this is the third function with 3 parameters, and we'd like to call this function this way, 3, and I need to pass 3 values here, 6, 7, 8, right? So in this case, if you want to call this function with 2 argument values, then again you need to set the default values. Let me set it 50. Let me do compilation and linking and see the output of this code, then I will discuss it further. Switching to the terminal, we have compilation and linking, and we have execution. So you can see 26, 31, 38 are displayed. So if you look into the values here, first in this display, in this and outcome of this statement should be 6, 7, 13 plus 10, 13 plus 10, 23. I think that was 23, right? So it was 23, and the second is 26. So here 6 plus 10 plus 10, 26. In the third case, it is 31 and 38. So we have 6, 7, 8. If you add 3 things, 21 plus 10, 31. It's 31, and in the second case, 15 is used in the in the place of 8, so therefore it is 38. Now, now the one thing you might have noticed here is that I have put set default values for only the last um, argument, last parameter. So it's possible that uh, one rule that you need to follow when you use default parameter is if you set for a parameter, then you must set a default value for all the parameters on the right side of the list. This is a list of parameters, so if you set a default value for this parameter, then you must set default value for all the parameters that come after on the right side um, in the list. So we cannot you must set default value for so you cannot do something like this. This is not allowed. If you have default value, then you must have default value for all the next parameters. So that is the one syntactic requirement that you want to follow. Now this is about the setting the default values. You can also set default values for all the parameters, um, but provided that you actually do not violate this requirement. Right now, we are going now. Next thing I want to discuss is implication of this default values for function overloading. Right now, here, for example, if I set default value, this default value for this this second parameter equals to, let's say, 21. And if I want to call this function here, because if I set default values for these two parameters, I should be able to call um, this function. So I can call this function without issue, but in case if it is a function overloading, for example, if this is all these have the same name, function name, and we are calling this function, so now this is the function overloading. We have function sum, and this is an overloaded version of the function with additional parameter, and this is another overloaded version of the function with another additional parameter. So in this case, if you call, there are several issues we can see already. Even let me remove this here. We have the issue. The issue here is that let me start from here. We have this sum function with parameter 6, right? So now what is happening here is, if you call the sum function with one argument value, then even if I don't have this function, so with one argument value, compiler cannot determine whether this invocation should be invocation of this function with this 6 value for this parameter, or it should be the invocation of this second function with 6 value for the first parameter and default value for the second parameter, right? So that causes ambiguity. So um, that that is the situation of ambiguity that we want to avoid when we are using default parameter values in function overloading. So either you remove this entire function, or you actually do not have this default value, so that it creates the ambiguity for the compiler. Compiler cannot decide which function to actually call, right? In this case, there is no issue, because if you call with zero parameter, no parameter, is directly compiler determines that these two functions have to be called with at least one parameter. This at least one parameter, at least two parameters, two arguments. But in this case, if it is called with zero without argument, then compiler can determine that it is the first function to be called with a default value for the parameter. And in this case also there is no issue, because there are three parameters. This function doesn't have three parameters. This function doesn't have three parameters. Here we have three argument values for the parameters. So compiler can determine which function to call. It's going to be third function. But in all the other cases, compiler is ambiguous. Compiler cannot determine, cannot find out. So we want to be careful about avoiding this situation, right? So for example, let me remove this default value for the second parameter. We actually got over this situation where if you call the function with one argument value, then compiler can determine that it is this function to be called, because if it was second, then there must be two argument value in this case. Now, and still there is a ambiguity in the case where you are calling the function with two values, whether this call should be this second function, or this call should be the third function with a default value 15 for the third parameter, right? So same situation is here, right? So you can practice and see how you can solve this issue. Yeah, I think this is the all I wanted to discuss here. Thank you for watching the video.